So, The Witcher Season 2 is out. I have finished it, and I'm ready to talk about it. I rewatched the first season and reread the first 3 books in preparation for this second season, so I was definitely ready and I went in with a very open mind. I waited 2 days after watching the finale before I started writing this review because I wanted to give it some time and see how it sat with me after a couple of days. I'm going to start by talking about what I liked, and then I'll move into the issues I had with Season 2 because, well, I have plenty to talk about. So, what did I like about this season? Well, I think Henry Cavill is doing an admirable job. Just from reading interviews with him, it's very clear to me that he cares about the character of Geralt and has a respect for the source material, which goes a long way for me, and having him involved with the show is something I appreciate. Also, gotta mention, episode 1 was probably my favorite of the season. Did I think it was incredible? No, but I thought it was a solid 7.5 out of 10 episode of television. It was adapting my favorite short story from The Last Wish, so it had a huge leg up there, and in some ways it brought it to life fairly well. I think Kristofer Hivju was a fantastic novella, and looks-wise he was very close to what I had imagined, and his conversations with Geralt were really enjoyable. I also was intrigued by some of the changes that were set up, like Geralt already knowing Nivellen in this version of the story. That had me really interested. I had issues with this episode for sure, but overall it started the season out stronger than I was expecting. Right away, another performance I have to mention, the actress who plays Tissaia, her name is Miana Buring. She's also the voice of Anna Henrietta in Blood and Wine, and she is a phenomenal actress. I felt this way in Season 1 too. She puts on a great performance and is always a standout whenever she's on screen. I don't know that I actually care about Tissaia as a character at all currently, but that's 0% on her acting, and maybe that'll change in Season 3. Speaking of characters I hope to see more of, I really like the introduction to Dijkstra. That scene was really well done, and while Dijkstra in this show seems to be more like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones than actually like Dijkstra, I have to say that the actor, Graham McTavish is his name, has a very unique presence that I hope isn't wasted. This version of Dijkstra has me interested. I want to see where they go with him. Something I haven't seen much praise for, and a very good portrayal from this season that I want to point to, is Rience. He was very good this season, very close to what I had imagined appearance-wise. To me, Rience is kind of this third-rate slimy worm of a villain that you almost take progressively less and less serious as things move on, and I think they set him up pretty well to fulfill that role perfectly. Actually, one of my favorite moments from the entire season has to do with Rience, when he's torturing Jaskier and Yennefer comes to the rescue. This scene takes place under different circumstances in the books, but one thing I really liked in this scene was how they rewrote his facial burn. In Blood of Elves, if I remember right, Yennefer sends a fire spell through a portal, but in the show they had Yennefer lose her powers, which doesn't happen in the books, but I did like how they still had Yennefer burn Rience here by spitting a mouthful of liquor into his own flame. That's the kind of neat rewrite I can get behind. That said, the nickname they had for Rience throughout the rest of the season got really old, really fast. I personally found that incredibly cringeworthy. What else did I like? I like some of Geralt and Jaskier's interactions. I especially really enjoyed that line where Jaskier is imitating Geralt and says something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm so sad and complicated." Like, yeah, that kind of sums an element of Geralt in the books up fairly well. It's something you love him for. He's always taking the opportunity to monologue, and he's also a bit of a mood killer from time to time, which is strangely endearing. In the show, I have to say, Jaskier and Geralt are fun when they're on screen together. I do think they made Jaskier out to be way too much of a nuisance to Geralt in Season 1, but it seems like they're at least moving in the direction of actually having that wholesome friendship that's one of my favorite things about the books. Also, gotta mention the visuals. For the most part, they were better this season. There were absolutely some very questionable moments, including a couple that really stand out to me, but overall improved, especially in terms of the sets. Okay, time to move on to my issues with this season, and this is a tough show to review in that there's 2 ways of reviewing this show, at least from my perspective, and both of those ways have their pros and cons. The first is looking at it as both a show that has to stand on its own and an adaptation, and the second is to just look at it as its own thing, disregarding the fact that it's apparently supposed to be an adaptation. I suppose you could also only judge it on the merits of being an adaptation and literally nothing else, but I think you need to at least somewhat take into account the fact that things are going to be translated from page to screen, but this show is so far from being a one-to-one translation that this video would be about 40 hours long if we even went down that route, so we won't be doing that in this review. So I guess I'll start by saying that if I look at this show as only its own thing, without any connection to existing material, it's okay. As just another fantasy show. If this were something Netflix had come up with from nothing, If I'm being generous, it's a 7 out of 10 passable fantasy that relies on some great performances and mostly good visuals, but is dragged down by some cookie-cutter plot elements, questionable dialogue, and many one-dimensional side characters. That would be my summarized review if this were some other show unconnected to The Witcher, or even if this were an inspired by The Witcher series set in the universe, but obviously with different characters and such. That's also me being generous, but what can I say? It's the holiday season. That said, as a faithful on-screen adaptation of a beloved book series, The Witcher Season 2 makes Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire look like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It makes the Hobbit movies look like The Lord of the Rings. I'm not speaking in terms of quality, but in terms of being an adaptation. It feels like a stretch to even call most of this season an adaptation to begin with, because we aren't off the rails, we're on a different track. Once the season moves past episode 1, very few events that take place have anything to do with the source material other than this character is named Geralt, this character is named Ciri, they are at a location called Kaer Morhen. I pretty consistently see people having this argument that really no one is even trying to have with them, where they'll say, oh, why do you expect a one-to-one literal translation of the books? This is a TV show, of course they'll change some things. The problem is, almost no one is asking for a one-to-one adaptation. I think virtually every reasonable person knows that when things are being translated from page to screen, things change. A lot more can be shown in a visual medium, while others maybe just don't work at all and need to be cut or reworked. That's fine, hell, half of the things I praised were changes that I thought were decently well done. As a viewer, I went into this season with an open mind. I wanted to love it. I love The Witcher, and I want nothing more than to have a show, or even a whole universe of interconnected shows that I love on that same level. The issue that I ultimately take is that this show could have been, and maybe still could be, so much more than what it currently is. I can't help but be somewhat frustrated while watching when I know that the show has gutted fantastic source material in service of writing that, quite frankly, doesn't come close to meeting the quality of what it's replacing. It would be one thing if the writers replaced the original material with something of equal or better quality. I still probably wouldn't love the decision, but I could certainly come around to it. That's not what we have here though. We have rich, nuanced writing and world building replaced with kinda generic Hollywood fantasy. And the last thing I want to describe a Witcher show as is just another Hollywood fantasy. I'm still rooting for the show to improve, I really am. I want this show to be better, to be something more. I want to see some of these actors giving it their all in favor of improved writing moving forward, but as things currently stand, the show, in my opinion, is not living up to its full potential. Again, even ignoring the events of the source material, some of the writing choices in this season are just baffling. Of the criticisms I've seen, one of the most prominent is the handling of the character Eskel. To be honest, as a concept, Eskel dying would have been fine by me under the right circumstances. This show isn't the books, Eskel is barely in the books to begin with, and the show also isn't the games, which capture Eskel perfectly, but if the show made his death mean something and had it serve a larger purpose, then sure, I guess, it's all a matter of execution. However, what they actually do manages to accomplish all of absolutely nothing. They introduce Eskel in the second episode of the season, and personality-wise, he's nothing like Eskel in any way. And then after he's had all of 10 minutes of screen time, they kill him off in the very same episode. If you were going to kill off a Witcher in the episode where they're all introduced, what purpose does killing off Eskel serve, and not one of the half-dozen red shirt Witchers that serve no purpose and die in the finale anyway? I can already see people saying, oh, it's so it was emotionally impactful, but it wasn't. As a viewer, I had no connection to this version of Eskel. When he died, I felt nothing. All I could think was, well, that was a total waste. Seriously, what was the purpose? Shock value? Because if so, it's a cheap attempt that doesn't even succeed at being shocking. Again, if they decided they wanted to kill one of the main trio of Witchers at Kaer Morhen, why not actually make it mean something? The show already drastically extends and expands upon the events at Kaer Morhen, so if you're going to do that, then use that time to build up an on-screen relationship between Eskel and Ciri as she's training, and while Ciri is bonding with him, so are we, the viewers. Use that time to show that Eskel is the closest thing Geralt has to a brother, so when Eskel dies, you feel that impact. As it stands, it was just a complete waste of a character that the majority of viewers were already interested in going into the season. Anyway, I will be talking about Season 2 more in future weeks, but I think that sums up my thoughts overall on the season as a whole. At the end of the day, the show is what it is. I'm rooting for it to be better, we'll see if it gets there, but who knows. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video and could leave a like, that certainly helps get these videos out there. And if you do want more Witcher content in your life, feel free to subscribe. I do have a Witcher 3 video that I wasn't quite able to post before Season 2 came out, so expect that in the next few days. It's been a wild few months, posted a Witcher 3 video to 0 subscribers just 2.5 months ago, and we might be hitting 20k before the end of the year. Maybe. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.